Discover the unexpected truth. A general's incredible revelation transforms a veteran's mocked misfortune. Samuel Hartman stood in the haze of summer heat, the weight of his past bearing down like the humid air choking his small Midwestern town. Once a revered military general, now he felt more like an outdated piece of memorabilia tucked away in a forgotten corner. His days blended into one another, the vibrant recognition for his service faded into whispers and sideways glances. He wasn't just retired, he was invisible. He hoed the overgrown weeds in his yard, each pull reminding him of battles fought and won, yet no one seemed interested in the scars that shaped him now. Loneliness wrapped around him tighter than the faded medals hanging on his walls, remnants of an honorable life marked by glory which now felt like a foreign language. As he paused to wipe the sweat from his brow, his gaze caught on the ramshackle porch next door. Jason Walker, a much younger veteran, slumped in a chair, nursing a drink. Samuel's chest tightened at the sight. He remembered his own struggles with isolation, but he could see that Jason's battles against the town's judgment were just beginning. The townsfolk whispered about Jason, labeling him, the town drunk, as if the echo of his past service meant nothing. The sound of laughter from a group of neighbors across the street cut through Samuel's thoughts, a painful reminder of the camaraderie he once enjoyed and now sorely missed. Could he reach out to Jason before the town buried him under their casual cruelty? Taking a breath, he walked over, resolute. Their conversation started hesitantly, words hung heavy in the heated air. But with each passing moment, Samuel found an unexpected flicker of purpose reigniting within him. Jason shared his struggles, the weight of PTSD and fatherhood blending into a suffocating cloud of despair. Samuel's heart tightened, sensing his own past in Jason's eyes. The stories of shared sacrifices between them burrowed deeper than the superficial judgments of the townsfolk. Samuel saw potential in this man who was bravely fighting against the tide. Before they could deepen their connection, Samuel found himself faltering. He faced the notion of how their shared story might clash with the town's prevailing attitudes. The project he envisioned, a history of local veterans, could offer both men a chance to reclaim who they were, yet he wondered if it would only open old wounds instead. Before they could anticipate the backlash, he mentioned the ambitions he held tightly to. "We should tell the stories that matter." His voice wavered at the thought of setting aside his own fears and stepping into battle once again. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The days turned into weeks, the quiet entrenchment of their shared work charged with rising intensity. Just as they began to feel the weight of their journey, a local councilman surfaced with a scornful smirk, one eyeing their project through the lens of prejudice. "Why would we care about someone like you?" he taunted Jason during a public meeting, glancing at Samuel as if to validate their disdain. Torn between his past glory and Jason's present pain, Samuel felt a surge of rage fill his veins. It felt personal, yet he hesitated to confront the venom laced in the councilman's words. How could he show Jason that their dignity didn't begin and end with medals and titles? As the confrontation escalated, doubts clouded Samuel's thinking. Was he truly here for Jason, or was he clinging to an idea of redemption for himself? In that moment of uncertainty, a knot formed in his chest. The echoes of the councilman's words reverberated through him. Would they both be victims of a prejudice that had no regard for what truly mattered? Samuel's resolve flickered under weighty scrutiny, their shared mission teetering dangerously on the brink. The realization was harrowing. This battle meant more than just history, it was about uncovering the truth of honor and dignity in a world that desperately wanted to keep those things buried. How could he do anything to change perceptions when his own inner strength wavered at the idea of confronting a town dictated by fear? The struggle loomed larger, and they stood on the precipice of a fight that could define not just their lives, but the lives of many beneath the weight of ignorance. As Samuel stood there, paralyzed by the councilman's derision, he could feel the ground shifting beneath him. The feeling of invincibility that once characterized his military career felt distant, as though it had been a dream he could no longer grasp. He had lived in the light of glory, the rush of commanding respect and admiration evident in every salute, and now he found himself lurking in the shadows of judgment, unsure and anxious. Jason glanced at Samuel, his expression shifting from despair to concern. It was a reflection Samuel had seen in too many eyes, one that dared to ask if he would rise to the occasion. The weight of the councilman's attack lodged firmly in his chest. This moment had the potential to alter the trajectory not just for Jason, but for himself as well. In that instant, he realized that their dignity was something they would have to fight for, that it wouldn't simply be given back like a misplaced item of valor. Jason, he forced the words out, each syllable a tentative step forward, we can't let them diminish what we've sacrificed. Let us gather the stories of those like us and show them the truth. There it was, the spark he had been searching for, a light flickering in the darkened room they had both occupied for too long. The sharpness of determination ignited something within him, casting aside his doubts. If there was a battle he would engage in, it was this one, where the stakes were higher than mere recognition. It was about reclaiming their narratives. In the following days, Samuel dove headfirst into his vision. He spoke to veterans like himself and Jason, gathered their accounts, and started forming a collage of resilience and struggle. Each interview chipped away at the anxiety that had once blanketed him. With every story penned, he could feel the cloistering grip of invisibility loosening its hold. They weren't alone in this fight. He wasn't just resurrecting tales of war, but breathing life into their struggles, their losses, and their unyielding strength. But with the rise of their project came renewed scorn from the townsfolk. Glances lingered longer and whispers grew louder. One evening, while editing an interview captured on an old camcorder, Samuel heard children mimicking the councilman's taunts. Anger welled within him, painfully familiar yet igniting something anew. In the darkest corner of that room, he began to confront a crucial turning point in his journey. Would their project define them, or would they define it? He understood now that the townspeople's derision stemmed from ignorance, not malice, but a misunderstanding of their struggles. Empowered, Samuel sought to create a public forum, a platform for their stories to resonate beyond the hallowed walls of their homes. We need to invite them in, he declared to Jason as they pored over footage late into the night. Let them hear us, understand us. They may not cast away the prejudice, but at least they'll see us, and that's the first step. But hesitation still brewed beneath his bravado. Would people listen? Would they see past their biases? The councilman loomed in his thoughts, a metaphorical specter of the worst kind of doubt. Yet the fighting spirit of a general stirred within him, pushing him to change the narrative of their lives, to reclaim a sense of purpose he had too long relinquished. Hesitant yet determined, he envisioned a flyer, a spark to galvanize interest, an announcement of an upcoming gathering they could not afford to lose. As he set the pieces in motion, the shadows of doubt still lingered. Could the town's hearts be softened by their truth? The questions swirled as he prepared to confront the councilman again, this time not in whispers, but in assertive advocacy for his and Jason's dignity. Samuel realized he was on the brink of unearthing something deep within himself, a voice that had been silenced. With the gathering just days away, he knew he couldn't back down. The time had come to face not just the councilman, but the collective ignorance of the town that spurned their humanity. Everything was on the line, including the fragile threads of friendship and respect he had begun to weave with Jason. As he looked around at the collected stories, Samuel felt the weight of something monumental building. Would he have the courage to stand up, not only for himself but for all those who had fought for their dignity? The question loomed like a drumroll, and he steeled himself for the confrontation ahead. They were invisible no longer, but the fight was just beginning. The days leading up to the gathering were a blur of urgency and rehearsed speeches. Samuel found himself pacing in his small living room, the walls adorned with photographs of his military days, smiling faces of comrades, trophies from competitions, and the medals that felt like a heavy burden now. They were symbols of honor once, yet they now whispered the fragility of his identity. Just words, he muttered to himself, refocusing on the message he intended to convey. Even as he practiced, doubt gnawed at the edges of his resolve. How would he articulate their pain? How could he convince his audience that their lives were worth acknowledging? Each time he envisioned the councilman's sneering face, his pulse quickened. Deep-seated anger and resentment surged within him, a warrior's frustration at being cornered. The councilman represented more than just a single voice, he was a representation of all those who thought their sacrifices were meaningless. But now, instead of retreating under that judgment, Samuel sought to stand unwavering. "Jason, let us go over our opening again," Samuel called over to where his friend leaned against the wall, lost in thought. They had spent countless hours collaborating, but the weight of their impending exposure was palpable. "Let us remind them who we are," Jason replied, his voice steady. "We're not just veterans, we represent resilience, the will to fight when it seems hopeless. They need to see the strength behind our stories. Let them hear it." As Jason spoke, something clicked within Samuel. This meeting wasn't merely about confronting ignorance, it was about defining their own narratives, infused with the honesty of their experiences. "We need to show them that we are human, not just war machines or faded histories," he responded, his voice resonating with a newfound clarity. Each moment of agreement sparked a deeper understanding of their mission, a collaborative will to stand together. However, with the increasing momentum of their project came an intense pressure. Samuel frequently experienced flashes of self-doubt, his heart racing as he wondered if the townspeople would really be willing to listen. Late one night, as he sifted through the recorded interviews for the umpteenth time, he stumbled upon a segment where a former soldier recounted his struggles post-deployment. The pain and vulnerability resonated, and in that instant, Samuel recognized a pivotal truth. Their stories were not solely narratives of loss or valor, they were testament to perseverance forged from hardship. Samuel stood tall as he considered this realization, a flicker of confidence reigniting within him. They had fought for recognition, for their stories to resonate beyond themselves, but perhaps it was more than that, they were fighting to illuminate the common humanity that lay beneath all facades. With this revelation, Samuel set to work on a revised outline. He would share his own journey, with all its struggles, as the opening touchstone. Vulnerability often inspired empathy, perhaps by exposing his scars, he would unlock the hearts of his audience. On the eve of the gathering, anxiety clawed at him but was now mingled with a fierce determination. This was not just a gathering in a town hall, it was a turning point. Samuel had transformed from a man overshadowed by derision into one who saw his worth and the worth of those around him. But just as he began to feel centered, a knock rattled through his thoughts. Samuel opened the door to find an unexpected visitor, the councilman himself, his expression unreadable. The confrontation he had anticipated loomed closer, the moment of truth heavy in the air. Would the confrontation yield understanding or further escalation? With conflicting emotions swirling, Samuel braced for what was to come, realizing that this meeting could define not only the gathering but also his own understanding of dignity and self-respect. As the door closed behind the councilman, Samuel felt the weight of an entirely new battle forming, one that threatened to reshape his journey again. Would his resolve hold against the scrutiny of the same man who had belittled their sacrifices, or would it falter in the pressure of looming confrontation? Samuel's pulse raced as he faced the councilman. The air thickened with tension, resembling the quiet moments of anticipation before a storm. Would words transform him into the man of conviction he had envisioned, or would they fracture under the weight of this unexpected encounter? "Samuel," the councilman began, his voice cool and calculated, "I didn't expect to find you so proactive." The mockery edged his tone, but Samuel recognized the note of concern. Perhaps it was not entirely directed at him, but rather, a reflection of the chaos surrounding them both. "Proactive?" Samuel challenged, steadiness in his voice. I'm trying to bring attention to our reality. I won't let it be dismissed any longer." The councilman's presence ignited a fire within him, stimulating a mixture of fear and defiance. He had long fed on anger during their past interactions, but now, something had shifted. Now he wanted understanding. The councilman crossed his arms, the small movement a wall of opposition. "You think airing your grievances in public will solve anything? Do you expect sympathy from people who simply don't understand?" For a moment, Samuel's stomach knotted. Did he truly expect sympathy? But then, the clarity of his purpose emerged from the chaos of self-doubt. It's not about sympathy. It's about honesty. About showing that our sacrifices bear weight. If we stay silent, nothing changes. This response took the councilman aback, though he quickly recovered. "And do you think your stories will change minds? Will it really matter to all those who harbor disdain for your past?" And there it was, the harsh truth he had feared confronting. Samuel wrestled with that question, feeling the memories of unacknowledged pain rise. Each one of his fellow veterans had faced battles silently lost in the inner turmoil of their experiences. Now was the moment they could collectively reclaim their narratives. "People may not understand now," Samuel replied, heart pounding but resolute, "but if they hear us, they may begin to see. We are human, not specters in their minds." The councilman's narrowed eyes softened for the briefest second before the mask of skepticism returned. "You're a soldier. A veteran. What do you know of change? The world doesn't accommodate for personal tragedies." "Maybe it's about time it did," Samuel shot back, frustration bubbling beneath his well-rehearsed conviction. Where was the line between survival and advocacy? Suddenly, he was not just fighting for himself but for every narrative ignored. Silence lingered between them. Samuel could hear the faint ticking of the clock, reminding him of the impending gathering and his own escalating resolve. Here was an opportunity to shift perception from veteran as a relic to veteran as a resilient member of society, capable of contributing beyond what was worn on their uniforms. "Let me tell you this," he said, a steady pulse of determination guiding his words. "If you come to the gathering, listen. Maybe you'll hear something worth changing your views. If you truly want to understand, this is your chance." The councilman paused, as if genuinely considering the invitation. Samuel sensed the weight of the moment hanging in the air, bridging the gap between their worlds, his courage battling the councilman's skepticism. Yet as the councilman finally stepped back, a slight smirk tainted his lips. "Call me cynical, but I doubt your potential for impact. I'll think about it." And with that, he turned to leave, the door clicking shut behind him. Samuel sank onto the nearest chair, breathless. Doubts swirled momentarily, but a spark of defiance ignited in the aftermath of this exchange. Was he truly equipped to reshape opinions? The initial encounter stung, but it also reinforced a truth he'd nearly forgotten: the battle wasn't just against indifference but a beacon of hope for the future of those who were undervalued. As Samuel sat alone with his thoughts, he realized that despite the councilman's skepticism, he had taken a stand. The path to growth often felt insurmountable, but each small victory was a testament to resilience. What if the councilman didn't show at the gathering? Would his absence validate his doubts? Samuel was left with more questions than answers, but that was part of the journey. He was about to confront not only a councilman but a community that needed to hear voices like his. The gathering would arrive soon, but for now, he needed to gather his thoughts and fortify his resolve. Could he truly translate personal struggles into a narrative that would resonate and, perhaps, shift perception? The moment hung before him, veiled in uncertainty, yet tinged with the promise of purpose. And unbeknownst to him, the real confrontation, the one that would ignite all he believed in, had yet to come. Would he emerge victorious, or would his resolve be only another casualty in this fight for recognition? Samuel leaned forward, elbows planted on his knees, grappling with the aftermath of his confrontation with the councilman. The buzzing fluorescent lights overhead cast a stark glow over the empty room, illuminating the contours of his determination. Every pulse of his heart was a reminder that the most significant battles weren't fought in the field but in the quiet recesses of the mind. He recalled the councilman's mocking demeanor, the way it had ricocheted off his carefully constructed resolve. Each taunt felt like a challenge, igniting a fire within him that refused to be extinguished. But a nagging doubt clawed at the edges of his confidence. Was he equipped to wield words as his weapon? Samuel shook his head slightly, striving to clear the uncertainties clouding his mind. A deep breath steadied him. This wasn't merely about personal validation, it was about reshaping a narrative that had long been cast in shadows. He recalled the faces of his fellow veterans, the silent camaraderie that had bonded them through shared experiences. They were complex beings with stories worth telling, heroes in their own right, struggling with demons that none outside their ranks could comprehend. He needed to cultivate that complexity, to allow vulnerability to intertwine with strength as he prepared for the gathering. Would he find a way to articulate their narratives in a manner that connected? Instead of mere phrases woven from despair, he could weave hope and resilience into their stories. Samuel rose from the chair, taking a step toward the nearest window. The world outside showed no signs of halting. People went about their daily lives, oblivious to the struggles of those like him. Fury surged within him, an urge to shake their indifference. Yet, more importantly, he felt the seed of something else budding inside, a willingness to bridge the divide through empathy rather than confrontation. He would structure his speech not as a mere recount of grievances but as a universal testament to resilience and recovery. He envisioned sharing the weight of their sacrifices, painting them not as specters who haunted the fringes of society but as integral threads woven into the fabric of it. The clock on the wall ticked louder, and Samuel felt the urgency escalate. Each second marked the dwindling time left for clarity. He needed to find the right words, those that resonated, that stirred empathy and healed the rifts of misunderstanding. With newfound purpose, he pulled out his notebook, a well-worn companion filled with thoughts, scribbles, and half-formed ideas. As he flipped through the pages, determination coursed through him like a current. Something like a mantra rose within, each point echoing the lessons learned in silence. Vulnerability is strength, he wrote. Reclaiming identity is reclamation of power. He paused, allowing those words to sink in. Each letter etched prosperity into the foundation of his evolving self. It went beyond just defending their honor, it was about redefining what it meant to be a veteran in a society that, for so long, had painted their experiences in a simplistic light. Samuel's vision sharpened. He needed a narrative that connected to those who might not understand yet offered them a chance to grow alongside him. The councilman, his inner adversary, became a symbol of the resistance that he sought to surpass. Samuel had a mission, a guiding light illuminating the path ahead, one reaffirming that even the darkest experiences bear possibilities. With each stroke of his pen, Samuel prepared to face not just the councilman, but the community that had yet to be introduced to the lives of veterans. He could sense that the moment was upon him, a precipice where doubt and courage teetered. The journey was no longer just about winning a solitary personal fight, it had expanded into a deeply layered quest for recognition and understanding. The expectations loomed heavier than ever, but within Samuel lay a resolve fortified by the belief that change was possible. As he left the desk, a new imagine rose in his mind. Perhaps the councilman would indeed take him seriously, or even recognize the shared humanity that he had fought to illuminate. The gathering promised confrontation, yes, but also the chance to forge a connection that could reshape perceptions forever. What if the moment Samuel had been preparing for was far more significant than his own fight? What if it became the catalyst for broader change, a bridge over the chasm created by misunderstanding? Samuel stepped toward the door, heart pounding with both fear and excitement, ready to transform the narrative. As he grasped the handle, he could almost taste the electricity of anticipation in the air. Today, he would not just face the councilman, he would face himself and the legacy he wished to leave behind. The encounter shaped up to be more than just a meet, it would become a revelation that would challenge everything he thought he knew. And perhaps, just perhaps, it would be an awakening for all involved. The door swung open with a creak that echoed off the sterile walls, marking Samuel's passage from solitude to the chaotic sanctuary of confrontation. His heart raced, and with each step, each grain of trepidation blended with exhilaration. He was no longer just a soldier haunted by shadows, he was their voice, ready to articulate a collective truth that had long been suppressed. As he crossed the threshold into the waiting room, he was struck by the atmosphere charged with anticipation. The faint chatter of voices melted into a dull roar, a tapestry of emotions woven from uncertainty, arrogance, and hope. Samuel scanned the faces around him. Some were familiar, veterans whose stories intertwined with his own, while others belonged to the civilians, faces reflecting curiosity layered with skepticism. Samuel's mind buzzed with strategy. He needed to harness that skepticism, turning it into something constructive. What if, instead of arguing his points, he made them feel the weight of his words? The councilman, with his practiced dismissiveness, would be more formidable than any battlefield he had experienced. But Samuel recognized that every challenge birthed an opportunity. He took a deep breath, gathering the energy swirling within him. He couldn't afford to let it dissipate too early. Pacing himself was crucial. He couldn't exhaust his resolve against an opponent who would surely attempt to unnerve him when he least expected it. Speak their language, he reminded himself, replaying fragments of advice given by his mentor, a fellow veteran turned motivational speaker. Learn to connect before attempting to change minds. His thoughts shifted back to the stories of his comrades, fragile yet resilient tales that deserved to be honored. He had spent nights listening to them unravel, their pain spilling forth like threads unraveled from a frayed tapestry, revealing the human fabric hidden beneath the surface. This was his moment to weave it all back together. Emerging from his reverie, Samuel focused on the podium ahead, a symbol of authority that amplified the stakes. A woman stepped forward to introduce him, her voice a crisp contrast to the murmurs that settled over the gathering. "Let us give a warm welcome to Samuel Harrington," she announced. It was a simple acknowledgement, yet it stirred something in him, a sense of responsibility that transcended his self-awareness. He realized that this moment wasn't just about his narrative, it was an opportunity to elevate those who felt unseen, unheard. With each step toward the podium, Samuel felt gravity pull him into a deeper conviction. Memories flickered before him, the camaraderie of his unit, laughter exchanged over devastating memories, the quiet moments where shared struggles built invisible bridges. Voices combining into a chorus of strength filled his consciousness, offering silent affirmation. Once at the podium, Samuel scanned the audience, allowing vulnerability to ground him. He could feel their eyes on him, some with judgment, others with curiosity, but he had no desire to be diminished by the weight of their gazes. "Today," he began, "I'm here to share not just my story, but the stories of countless brave men and women." His voice resonated, each syllable spilling forth with the clarity of purpose. He drew them in, recounting the fragmented battles not won solely on foreign soil, but in quiet corners of their minds. He painted portraits of the struggle to reintegrate into a world that often felt alien. Through vivid metaphors, he bred understanding where once there had been only indifference. But as he built this intricate tapestry, a familiar unease began to prickle at the back of his mind. The councilman had yet to arrive, but his absence felt thick, like a storm cloud looming on the horizon. Samuel was aware that the real confrontation was yet to come, an inevitable clash that could either validate his mission or threaten to unravel everything he had woven thus far. How would he respond when the councilman wielded his skepticism like a sword? The fear of being dismissed echoed through him, but beneath that, he unearthed a sliver of relentless resolve. Suddenly, the door swung open with abrupt force, drawing every eye. The councilman strode in, self-assuredness oozing from his every move. Samuel's pulse quickened. This confrontation, this direct challenge before a crowd, could either break him or propel him forward. He steadied his breath, readjusting his focus, crystallizing the strength found in each of his vulnerabilities. The next few moments would not just define his stance against the councilman, but the very essence of his fight for recognition as a veteran. This was not merely about engaging in a debate, but an authentic showdown for hearts and minds. Little did Samuel know, his words would ignite a revelation not only for himself but for everyone present. The time had come to face the multifaceted truth of his existence, a truth that could challenge the perception of both veteran and civilian alike. The question loomed, would they transcend their preconceptions together, or would this moment crumble under the weight of doubt? The councilman entered with an air of practiced indifference, scanning the room as if assessing a battlefield before launching an offensive. Samuel's heartbeat synchronized with the gentle tremor of uncertainty coursing through him. But he was determined to keep his composure. The time for reflection had closed, now was the moment for action. "Ah, Samuel Harrington," the councilman began with a tilt of his head, a smirk curling his lips. "I must say, I've heard quite the buzz around your little presentation." The casual mockery hid sharper undertones, an attempt to slice through Samuel's confidence. It was a tactic Samuel had witnessed too often, the art of belittling. With a steady breath, Samuel leaned into the energy radiating from the audience. He wouldn't allow the councilman's facade to distract him. "Thank you for joining us," he replied, his voice even. "I hope you're prepared to listen as much as you speak." It was a small pushback, but one that sent a ripple through the room. Some faces softened, intrigued by his boldness. The councilman raised an eyebrow. The smirk faded slightly, perhaps he hadn't expected such fortitude. "I doubt it will be as enlightening as you imagine. Do tell, what can you share that we haven't already heard from those who merely want handouts?" His words dripped with condescension, the type that had silenced many before. Samuel could feel the electric tension building. The councilman was wielding his words like a weapon, aiming to provoke a response. Samuel sensed the weight of every eye upon him, a reminder that this wasn't just personal, it was about every marginal voice yearning for recognition. "What if we took a step back?" he began, his tone shifting. "What if we defined veterans not by what they've lost, but by what they can gain, a narrative that includes healing, potential, and contributions?" He could see the flicker of doubt cross the councilman's face, but it was quickly quelled. "You think your experiences make you an authority on our community's needs? Please. Your camaraderie does not equal understanding." Samuel's pulse quickened, but he channeled that adrenaline into clarity. "My experiences have taught me about resilience. I've witnessed the struggles of my brothers and sisters that lie beneath the surface. Our battles continue at home, each invisible wound begging for attention. To dismiss us is to overlook the potential we hold." His words hung in the air, infused with emotion but grounded in truth. Something shifted, he could see the hesitance in the councilman's demeanor cracking, ever so slightly. Samuel pressed on, relentless. "We all have a stake, whether in wealth or wisdom. Consider this as an opportunity to bridge a gap, rather than a moment to mock." A murmur rippled through the crowd, a stirring acknowledgement of the reality he presented. The councilman, once towering with arrogance, was slowly losing ground. Yet, Samuel knew this was no small victory, this was a war with shifting tides that often persisted beyond a single confrontation. "Do you really believe that veterans can truly contribute? What gives you that faith?" The councilman's disbelief was palpable, a challenge masked under the guise of skepticism. It was a turning point, and Samuel could feel it. "Yes, I do," he replied firmly, renewed conviction guiding each word. "We have seen both sides of humanity, violence and peace, fear and courage. If given the chance, we can help navigate these turbulent waters together. But first, we need to be heard, not dismissed." As he finished, Samuel's chest rose and fell, heavy with both adrenaline and purpose. There was a palpable shift in the room, the energy transformed by his words, rippling through the gathering like a gust of wind that stirs the leaves. Then, glancing back at the councilman, he realized this was more than just about this moment. It was about reshaping what it meant to be seen and understood. There was no going back now, he had crossed the threshold of uncertainty into a realm where hope took root. The councilman's eyes narrowed, an indication of recalibrated strategy. And if you are met with resistance? He countered, a challenge to dig deeper into Samuel's resolve. Samuel met his gaze unflinchingly, understanding that his answer could pivot the very nature of this dialogue. This was not mere rhetoric, this was an awakening. Then we fight. We fight not only for ourselves but for those who cannot stand alone. And that fight isn't just mine, it's ours. With that, a silent promise echoed within him, a vow to rise above the battlefield of skepticism and ignorance. The councilman's armor was cracking, and Samuel felt the weight of possibility ready to unfold. What he did not know was that within this stark confrontation, a far more profound revelation would emerge, shifting not only the perception of his journey but the very foundation of how they all perceived strength. As the councilman's eyes flashed with a flicker of recognition, Samuel's heart pounded with a singular truth: had he found the beginning of an unexpected alliance in their struggle? The atmosphere tensed around them, and as Samuel turned to address the crowd once more, he could feel the winds of change stirring. But what awaited him on this path held consequences he could scarcely imagine. Keying into the murmur of anticipation that swirled around the room, Samuel understood that he stood not just as an individual but as a figure embodying the collective struggle of those dismissed and marginalized. The councilman's challenge lingered in the air, heavy with the promise of conflict yet to unfold. Samuel took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. It was easy to be swept away by the storm of adulation or derision that could arise in a crowd. The challenge lay in transforming those currents into something constructive. He surveyed the audience, their faces now a blend of curiosity and intrigue. "Let us not shy away from the hard truths," he continued, his voice rising above the stillness. "We can't change minds if we don't first understand each other's backgrounds." He recalled the faces of fellow veterans, Jimmy, who struggled with PTSD in silence, and Maria, who had sacrificed so much only to be forgotten after her service. In that moment, projecting their stories onto his own, he felt a renewed urgency to push the boundaries of this conversation. "What do you fear?" he asked, looking directly at the councilman, who appeared temporarily shaken. "Is it the lost revenue in a long-term investment or the uncertainty of admitting fault in past actions?" The councilman's mouth twisted into a frown. "Fear? It's concern over the fiscal responsibility that our city needs to maintain its current stability. Resources are scarce. Or are they squandered?" Samuel interjected, sensing the shift in the councilman's rhetoric. "Aren't those funds better employed investing in our veterans, who can drive economic recovery through their skills and experiences?" The crowd seemed to lean in as Samuel spoke. The dialogue was dancing, while tension rippled like shockwaves in an anxious sea. He recognized the councilman's role as an adversary, but more importantly, he saw an opportunity to reshape perceptions both of veterans and of himself. Each word Samuel uttered was carefully orchestrated, a strategic gamble fueled by ambition but layered with vulnerability. As he stood before his audience, with every heartbeat, determination surged within him. Samuel knew that vulnerability, rather than weakness, could become his greatest asset. He had battled in trenches, this was his new battlefield. "The truth is," he said, pulling from a well of conviction, "none of us comes to the table without our own fears. Mine come from service, from watching my friends return home, yet struggle to reintegrate. That fear ignites a desire to forge alliances, not adversaries." The councilman clenched his jaw, the mask of indifference slipping just a touch. Samuel pressed forward, unwavering. "Strength is not silence, it is the voice raised against the tide of apathy. If my struggles, my shared stories with fellow veterans, spark even a glimmer of connection here today, we are further ahead than we were before. Is that what you want?" The councilman shot back, attempting to regain control of the conversation. "A hug and a pat on the back, or do you need a budget proposal that actually addresses the issues?" Samuel's resolve only solidified. "I seek acknowledgement. Changes aren't merely financial, they stem from understanding. That breeds support and fosters dialogue. We're telling you we are ready to fight, to partner in rebuilding, not to be tokenized." The atmosphere thickened, tension palpable as both man and audience grappled with Samuel's assertion. The councilman's carefully constructed ego resisted the notion of working together. Yet Samuel could feel a fragile thread of connection emerging, a possibility he yearned to nurture. "Tell me, councilman," Samuel urged, pushing forward with unmistakable resolve, "what will your legacy look like? Will it be built on avoidance or transformation?" As he finished, silence enveloped the room, every gaze locked onto the two men at the forefront of the tension. In that heavy pause, Samuel felt a quivering sense of possibility unfurling before him, the air thick with potential. The moment stretched, forcing Samuel to confront a realization. Was this dialogue a prelude to substantial change, or merely an exercise in futility? As he squared his shoulders, braced against the weight of skepticism, the councilman's response held the key to uncovering what lay ahead. Suddenly, the councilman leaned in, eyes narrowing. "And what if the truth exposes not only potential but the very frailty of the system itself?" In those words, Samuel felt a pulse of urgency. The conversation had transcended rhetoric, cutting to the very foundation of what they were willing to confront. This could be the breaking point of grappling with alliances, the negotiation of trust. He had come here seeking recognition, but perhaps, just perhaps, this fragile moment was beckoning him to a deeper revelation of both himself and the community he championed. The stakes had never been higher. Would he emerge in this confrontation as not only an advocate but a catalyst for profound change? And the answer lay just moments away. The tension in the room morphed with each passing second, Samuel's heart thrumming louder than the clock's ticking rhythm. The councilman's question hung like a loaded gun, daring Samuel to take the shot. He needed to push forward. What if the truth does expose weaknesses? Samuel countered, his voice steady yet resonant with emotion. "But shouldn't we grapple with those frailties? Isn't it more courageous to confront our shortcomings than to dismiss them for the sake of comfort?" He felt the audience shift, some leaned in closer, eyes brightening with hope, while others flinched at the sharpness of his words. Samuel had entered the arena a novice but was discovering the nuances of a far more complex dance. He took a gamble by presenting his vulnerability directly, unmasking an internal struggle that mirrored the community's wounds. "Your legacy," he persisted, locking eyes with the councilman, "isn't merely financial metrics or the gloss of stability. It's about the lives you touch. The stories you change. Every voice matters, and I'm here to ensure the forgotten are heard." The councilman's brow furrowed, he was wrestling with an uncomfortable truth. Samuel saw the crack in the facade, the doubt flooding in. A moment of realization flickered behind that stiff expression. Perhaps Samuel's challenge was resonating more than he anticipated. But the councilman wasn't the only one confronting possibilities. Samuel felt a rush of clarity. He was not just advocating for veterans, he was confronting his own reservations that had buried him in self-doubt for far too long. As applause echoed in the aftermath of Samuel's passionate words, he instinctively braced for the councilman's retaliation. But, unexpectedly, the councilman took a breath, not as a deflector ready to push back, but as if weighing his own commitment to truth. "I see what you're trying to do," he replied, voice quieter, almost reflective. "But employing emotional appeals doesn't offer a viable path. People want solutions, not just lamentations." "Solutions emerge when there's shared understanding," Samuel challenged, embracing the depth of his newfound awareness. "What I'm calling for is a radical change in not just perspective but values. Building bridges begins with connection, not mere proposals." At that moment, Samuel felt the weight of his words shift something profound within him, a realignment, perhaps. The room remained charged, a silent pact forming as he saw faces light with determination. They were mirroring his own evolving beliefs about leadership, community, and the essence of advocacy. The councilman exhaled, frustration melting into reluctant contemplation. What about accountability? What happens when those who trust you don't get the answers they seek? That question ignited an inner conflict within Samuel. He recalled instances of his military service, where accountability meant life or death, a clear line of responsibility that had slipped into shades of gray in civilian life. Before answering, he grounded himself. Accountability stems from authenticity, Samuel replied, his tone firm yet inviting. Instead of leading from a distance, we need a model of transparency. A dialogue where we're shaping responses together, not just handing down edicts. Samuel felt the room vibrate with realization as he articulated a vision that blended strategy with empathy. He was no longer a mere advocate, he was stepping into the role of a visionary, embracing the complexities of leadership, grappling with uncertainties. Yet, even amid the unfolding potential, a nagging apprehension lingered. How far was he willing to push? What fell through the cracks as ideals met reality? Questions pierced through the hopeful camaraderie he fostered. The councilman, still visibly mulling over Samuel's impassioned appeal, finally spoke, "It seems you may have ignited something. But igniting a spark doesn't always ignite a flame. How far can you carry this momentum?" The challenge sat heavily within Samuel's chest. Could he sustain this drive while navigating institutional constraints? His heart raced with the thrill of opportunity but constrained by the shadows of what lay ahead. As he prepared to respond, a single realization hit him: achieving transformation was not merely the outcome but also a test of resilience. He might fracture the system but also put everything at risk, including himself. This road was unfamiliar and fraught with unsteady footing. He squared his shoulders, ready to respond, but inwardly bracing for the unknown consequences of his next words. A certainty hung in the air: this was merely the beginning of a journey that would redefine him. A single question pressed against his lips, a single thought shaping his resolve. Was he ready for the battle that lay ahead? Before he could articulate it, the councilman interrupted. "You're stepping into deeper waters, Samuel. Are you truly prepared to face whatever it is that waits beneath the surface?" As those words settled in the air, the stakes became clearer than ever. The tension tightened like a noose, and Samuel realized this was no longer about the councilman, it was about himself, the man he was becoming, and the battles he had yet to fight. Samuel stood before the gathering, the councilman's weighty question still echoing in his mind. The room was charged, hearts and minds tightly woven into this singular moment, a collective breath held in anticipation. He realized he was standing at the threshold of transformation, not just for himself, but for an entire community yearning for recognition and understanding. "Am I prepared?" Samuel spoke, the words rolling off his tongue with newfound conviction. "I may not know precisely what lies beneath the surface, but I do know that true change demands courage. It requires stepping into the unknown with the intention of finding common ground." The councilman narrowed his eyes, and Samuel felt the room shift, an atmosphere charged with hope and tension. "Each veteran's story," Samuel continued, now leaning in as he engaged the crowd, "is a testament to resilience in the face of adversity, a lesson the broader community needs. When we share our truths, we disseminate not mere complaints but rather powerful blueprints for healing and growth. Are we not all seeking understanding?" As he looked out at the audience, he noticed a ripple of acknowledgement pass through them. Samuel felt emboldened. It was one thing to share pain, it was another entirely to imbue it with purpose. The vibration of his words began to weave possibilities into the fabric of that moment. "Together, we can rewrite our narrative," he asserted, his voice raising with passion. "We veterans may have hidden scars, but they forged a strength that even those who have not served can respect. It's time we leverage that strength to bridge the gap between us." The councilman seemed taken aback, possibly reconsidering the nature of his earlier arrogance. Samuel held on to that moment. The tide was shifting. "Imagine a community," he continued, "where our shared stories become the foundation for action. Where every voice matters and ignites a spark of empathy. Are we not all willing to face the uncomfortable truths to create that new path?" "You speak of hope," the councilman replied, a hint of vulnerability seeping into his tone, "but what guarantees are there that these aspirations translate into reality?" "Perhaps we start with accountability," Samuel said succinctly, glancing at the other veterans in attendance. As fellow veterans, we must also hold ourselves accountable. Acknowledgement creates room for action. Our stories will no longer slip back into silence. They will guide policy and inspire initiatives that support not just veterans but the community at large. But it must begin here, with you and me, together. At that moment, Samuel realized he wasn't merely advocating for recognition, he was igniting a revolution in how they saw, understood, and responded to one another. As he glanced around the audience, he saw hope sprouting in eyes once clouded by skepticism. Was it possible? Could this desperate need for change coalesce into a collective will? The councilman considered Samuel's words and turned back to the crowd. If you're suggesting a partnership, it will require sincere commitment, not just from me but from all of us. Are you willing to embrace this responsibility? In earnest, Samuel declared, but I won't stand alone. My fellow service members will join me. Let's gather the stories of everyone impacted. Let this project illuminate our truths so that we can be catalysts for responsible growth. The response was instantaneous. Applause erupted from the crowd, an affirmation that echoed against the walls of uncertainty. A palpable connection fused between Samuel and the councilman, a potential alliance rising from adversity. This was evolution unfolding before him, a testament to how vulnerability could evoke understanding. We will assemble a committee, the councilman began, voice firm yet softened by an openness forged in dialogue. One composed of veterans and representatives from our community. Together, we will draft proposals grounded in these narratives of resilience. In that moment, Samuel felt the shackles of isolation fall away. He had transcended the pain, the shame, and the indignation. He had transformed them into a viable partnership that promised action. Every struggle he had faced became a stepping stone leading to this confluence of courage, a powerful reminder that vulnerability was, at its core, a pathway to connection. Once he had felt like a relic, an obsolete hero fading into obscurity. Now, he was a champion of change, his story merging with those around him into a force that could reshape perceptions and lend authenticity to their collective cause. As the deliberative tones of the meeting faded into a hopeful murmur, the realization struck Samuel: his journey, once clouded by isolation, had cemented into a movement of advocacy and self-worth. They were no longer chained to their pasts, instead, they were catalysts for a progressive future. He stepped down from the podium as the applause subsided, heart swelling with pride. His story hadn't transcended to another chapter, it had forged a new beginning. Would he remain in obscurity behind closed doors, or would he step out as a voice to be reckoned with? He chose the latter. Now revitalized, Samuel pledged to assemble the narratives of his fellow veterans to bring forth the truths that mattered, shedding light on the depth and complexity of their shared experiences. In that commitment lay the key to the legacy he would leave. Jason, he called, waving over his comrade who had been supporting him all along. As Jason approached, a look of understanding passed between them, a silent acknowledgement of a mission revived. "We're ready to fight," Jason declared, determination etched into his features. Samuel nodded. Together, they would lead, inspiring others to fuse their stories into one woven tapestry of resilience. "Let us ensure our voices are heard," Samuel affirmed, now bursting with confidence. The veteran who had once felt invisible now emerged as a beacon of hope. And this was just the beginning. Now a vested community awaited him. He had risen from the shadows of disdain to seize authenticity amid adversity. Samuel Hartman would not fade into the background, he was here to forge a new narrative. This was the transformation they had sought, it embodied strength and solidarity. Now, that change echoed beyond him and spread like ripples across the community. Would their united voices resonate with others yearning for truth? This was the moment Samuel had prepared for. Armed with conviction, he would not merely redefine what it meant to be a veteran, he would step forth into the broader narrative of humanity, expanding the horizons of understanding beyond what they had ever imagined. Now was the time for action. And as the sun dipped low, painting the horizon with hues of valor, Samuel knew the urgency of their mission. It was time to bring forth the hidden stories to light. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.